what's the appeal? Why do you want to sail two-handed? And several things come out. Three things in particular. One, it's cheaper. Two, but that's not really the driving thing. But two is that they find it extremely satisfying. It's you've always got something to do off watch. It's almost like sailing single-handed with a mate, because the other person's always off watch, so you don't get to see them very often. But when you're on watch and on deck, it's full on. You've got to be the navigator, you've got to be the trimmer, you've got to be the helmsman, you've got to be the tactician and the strategist and the cook. And it's just engaging, and in a way, when you listen to the people who've done it, it starts to become quite clear why this type of racing is becoming more and more popular.
I think we've got 60 boats, at least 60 boats racing double-handed in this race, and we've seen that sort of going up by between 5 and 10 boats every race for the last few editions of this race. Another key advantage of the double-handing is that you basically the whole logistical exercise of keeping a crew together is vastly reduced. There's just two of you, so that's another big appeal for which actually gets people into doing it rather than sailing fully crewed.
One of the other things you just reminded me there, which has been quite controversial over the years, but of course you've only got 2 people on the boat, so on a boat that may normally be crewed by 8. So the boat is a lot lighter because you just don't have so many people on board the boat. You don't need to carry as much food, you don't need to carry as much kit, and so the boat is much lighter, which in certain conditions, particularly if you're going downwind a lot, makes the boat a lot quicker. Upwind, of course, you don't have the advantage of being able to sit the boat up.
That is the 10-minute gun for the start of IRC 3. They're starting in 10 minutes, 11:40. And that was their warning signal.
What, the dog?
Occasionally we do have dogs starting the races here. And
that's just barking.
Oh dear. Oh dear, I do apologise. Big crowd here on the Esplanade and all along the green for the starts in the Fastnet race. We see the Class 4 boats heading off into the distance. Good luck to all of them, and it'll be IRC 3 next. We've got drones here, we've got jet skis. We did have a Red Wing joining that start, actually, but they've come back now. They've decided against it.
Well, after their brutal start yesterday when a squall swept through, I should think they feel like they got a squall that saw about 35 knots, rain bouncing about half a metre off the water. I've never seen, well, I hadn't seen anything like it in the Solent for a very long time, but if they survive that, they probably think they can take on anything.
Yeah, that was, well, you, at one point you thought there was going to be a water spout, didn't you? But
I did, yes. It was, yeah, it looked like it, and but it didn't. It turned into a massive squall that just lay itself straight across the western Solent. We were watching the starts at the time, and we had no idea of quite how severe it was until it actually hit us. But it caused all kinds of chaos. I was hearing about it last night, talking with various people and friends who've been in it down at the western end, and there were boats laid flat. There were the worst. It was fine actually if you're going upwind. The problem was if you're going downwind, because it nearly tripled the wind speed, as if someone had opened a door at the other end, but also brought the kind of rain that just gives you about, I don't know, 50 metres visibility. I mean, you just couldn't see anyway.
I couldn't see the Red Wings at all. I lost them completely. But one of them dismasted in that start. Really violent gusts. All the others went, quite rightly, who were waiting for their starts, went straight back into the harbour.
Run away.
Yeah.
Well, nothing on the horizon, literally. As we look down the western Solent, it couldn't be a better start to this Fastnet race, this 2017 Rolex Fastnet race. It's absolutely gorgeous out there. It's just 18 knots, probably getting closer to 20 by the time you get down to the end and the tide accelerates. Clear blue skies, little cumulus on both shores popping up, but nothing that's going to develop, certainly at this stage, into anything more fruity.
3,000 people taking part on the water, thousands and thousands and thousands of people taking part on a virtual regatta, and you can enter your boat. Cal's radio is there. I'm just going to get some top advice here from Ian. I don't seem to be going very fast, Ian. I mean, I haven't hit the beach yet, which for me is good, but that purple boat's way out in front. What am I doing wrong here?
Yeah, it looks like you need to trim the sails on. I think you're just like pointing head to wind.
No, it's not. Hang on. It's not. I'm not going right into wind, Ian. Right. I'm going to head for Gurnard there. See how I do. I haven't hit. I haven't hit the beach yet, Matt.
It's only a matter of time.
Right. Anyway, I'm going to have to tack up the soda.
We're just alongside out here one of the Figaro Solo 2s out here, number 21. I'm not quite sure who that is. Do you know who that is, James? No.
21.
Yeah, 21. But of course, the reason it caught my eye is that these 32 footers, are they, or 35? Maybe 32 footers. Yeah, these 32 footers are well known in the offshore scene, particularly in the single-handed offshore scene. There's another one there, Seacat Services. So they're no strangers to long distances. They were built to charge around and do races of many hundred miles, sometimes thousands of miles. And this, in some ways, that's Alan Roberts. I recognise that name.
Two of the RC3 boats which we should be keeping an eye on, actually the double-handers, and they're both Sun Class 3600s. One of them, which is you'll recognise from his spectacular paint job, is called Redshift Reloaded, which is being raced by, double-handed by Ed Fishwick and well-known, and a guy called Nick Cherry, who's a very well-known figure in the. He's one of the British Figaro sailors, who's also a former British match racing champion. And the other one is a boat called Bellino. Again, that's a Sun Class 3600, being raced by Rob Craigie, who is currently the two-handed leader in the Rourke Seasons Championship. So I reckon those two boats will do very well, both in the double-handed class and also in RC3.
Rob Craigie's been in the short-handed scene for quite some time, hasn't he? I remember writing about him, or meeting him and then writing stories about him and the sort of growth and the development of the two-handed scene several years ago. He used to sail a J-boat. I think he had a J110.
J Bellino.
Yes, that's what it was, J Bellino, yeah.
And in fact, I'm seeing one of your old college mates, Nigel Colley, on this list as well.
Ah, good old Nigel. Well, he's been the class captain or chairman, but he's been running the solo and the two-handed scene over here for some time, and it's an interesting group. Just alongside a J109 here called Jelenko. They're actually an IRC3. Yes, that's right. So they are in the next start. Jelenko,
4 minutes 20 until their start. We don't have 10 minutes between each start now. We have 20 minutes. So IRC3 starting at 11:40, and then we'll have IRC2 at midday. 4 minutes and 10 seconds to go until the start of IRC3. Another big fleet, 84 entrants here.
And a big international contingent as well, and I say that because we're just going past a beautiful green Swan, American registered Swan called Finishing Line 44160. Yeah, Finnish line. Obviously a pun on the fact that it's a Finnish-built boat, I suspect. But yes, an American entry. And there are an awful lot. I've forgotten. I tried to memorise it last night. There's an awful lot of nations represented here in this race once again, just to go and to show or reinforce the international appeal that this race has.
Malice tacking near the squadron there, the Hod 35. And now 3 minutes and 15 seconds away from their start. With their Rolex Fastnet races, stickers on the bows, all of these boats. Not too many with us at the squadron this time, Matt.
No,
I think they'll mostly be out with you.
I was just thinking that, but I think that what's happening, we're right out of the pin end now, and people have come out this end, tacked around, and have given themselves as much runway as they can. I think many people have said, well, yes, technically there is an advantage to get down on the shore there, but there's also the potential for getting it wrong or getting caught up in a big group of boats, and they just want to have a clean start. For them, it's a 600-mile race. It's several days, and there's no need to mess it up in the opening seconds of the race. So, and I don't blame them, to be honest. If you come in from this end, the outer end of the line, right out by almost by the Bramble Bank, you've got plenty of runway to get yourself sorted out. You can find yourself a slot, and particularly find yourself a slot whereby you can bear away and head east if you need to. If you think you're being swept up to that tide too much, you can bear away. The last thing you want is a whole bunch of boats underneath you pushing you up and forcing your hand.
888 Sunrise, one of the JPK 10.8s, close to the squadron here. We've also got 1180X, much bigger boat there. They're preparing for their start, but they're not in this Class 3 start. Game on, coming down towards the squadron with a minute and a half to go.
People being very, very cautious at the northern end of the line here. They're way back from the line with, as you say, 1 minute 23 seconds to go until the start. Pretty much everybody way back from the line. I can see the transit lights on the squadron line there, the guide as to whether you're ahead or behind the line, and they're well behind it at the moment.
So, Ian, how many do you reckon are going to be pushed over here?
As Matt was saying, it looks like a much more conservative start than the previous RSC4. There are 1 or 2 boats slightly close to the line on starboard reaching along, but the main bulk of the fleet is further to leeward. They've started to head up now in the final seconds, and another 45 seconds to the start. And now the whole group is getting much closer to the line, and it's in these final seconds as the current starts pushing them strongly towards the line that will determine who gets the good start.
Some of them really powering in now on Sunrise, one of the JPK boats in the leading bunch here. And with 20 seconds to go now, it's the start of Class 3 here in the Rolex Fastnet race 2017. Another big class here, all shapes and sizes. 407 in the leading bunch coming in, that's Manitoba. And the race officers checking who's over the line, but the line is clear at the moment.
Going to be 2 cars here. Yeah, there's a group of boats over just in that leading pack, about a third of the way up from the squadron line.
Yeah, the race officers calling out the sail numbers. We don't have access to that here. We do have one French port tacker is 43645. See if they're going to get past all the others. That is, I think, Dream Pearls, which is one of the JPK boats.
They have made a stunning start, port tack start from the squadron end of the line, and I think they are going to cross the fleet. I mean, it will be very daunting as they approach that huge line of starboard tackers. But if they make it, that will be a fantastic feeling.
Going towards them is 1950, which is Elan, a swan boat there. But it does look as if Dream Pearls is going to do it, Ian, and get round the front of those starboard tackers.
Yeah, even if they don't cross, they basically can leave out that group and lead back into the better current on the island shore. So that's the start of the day. That's the best start we've seen this morning.
Well done to Dream Pearls. James Boyd speaking about those JPK boats earlier on. So, as you say, James, some of them in Class 4, some of them in Class 3.
Yes, well, actually, they come in 2 different flavours in this race. There's the smaller 1010s, which is the boat which won the Fastnet race 4 years ago, and then there's the bigger 1080, which we're seeing in this class, which is the boat which won the Rolex Fastnet race outright with a full crew 2 years ago. Dream Pearls is actually one of the favourites amongst the French fleet doing this. They've done incredibly well in the Rourke Season Championship so far, and I think we can expect great things from them. So that good port tuck start is no accident.
One of the boats that's really caught my eye, James, I don't know if you can read off which boat it is, but out here in the middle of the line, they haven't done as well as those that started in on the shore, that's for certain, but it's a JPK 1010, it's 4436, being sailed double-handed. I can't get close enough to read the tiny letters on the stern, but they made a very nice start, very conservative. They got themselves into a really nice slot, plenty of clear air, plenty of room to actually stick the bow down if they needed to. And whilst they were a fair way back from those that started down on the squadron end of the line, they've been gradually winding their speed up, and they're going extremely well. They're double-handed as well, and I'm not sure who that boat is. Who is it?
It's a boat called Blue Note. Again, that's one of the bigger JPKs. That's the 1080. As you can see, they're kind of sort of set up for one of the reasons for the variation in their rating is that some of these boats are sailed double-handed, and they set them up for double-handing. So they have a smaller sail plan, and as you can see from the one we're looking at the moment, it's got 2 rudders. which makes it relatively easy for the autopilot to steer it if they're going to use one of those. Just crossing us now, we've got Redshift Reloaded, which I was talking about earlier. That's one of the British double-handed favourites with Ed Fishwick and Nick Cherry, the Figaro sailor, former multiple British national match racing champion, sailing it. They're sort of leading this group going out to the right. And what's this big, incredible catch we've got behind us, Matt?
Yeah, that's really pretty, isn't it? Now, who is that? That's classic.
1355.
Yeah, 1355. Can't see who that is at the moment, but a very pretty looking boat.
Swan 55.
That's Lulotte.
Ah, yes, Lulotte. I see it written on the life rings.
That looks kind of comfy, Matt.
It does look comfy, doesn't it? I think the roast is probably on already, actually.
Off goes Class 3, close racing, close starts, coming into those exclusion zone marks that Ian was speaking about there, tacking up past the green. And everybody with their wet weather gear, or most people with their wet weather gear on there, sitting over the rail.
Yeah, I don't blame them, actually, because one of the things I was thinking as we came down this start line is as that tide has built, as it presses into the breeze, the sea state has definitely picked up, and it's really quite choppy here. It's a classic Solent chop. Of course, it's stirred up by the many hundreds of boats that are out here, but it definitely feels more punchy than I suspect the actual gradient wind might suggest. And as a result, a fairly wet.
Commentary and pictures continuing here on the Royal Ocean Racing Club website and the Rolex Fastnet race site, and of course on Fastnet Radio.
Indeed, I was just looking over at Firestorm, which is a J109, not one of the front runners, but the reason I was looking at it was I was actually looking out for a friend of mine, a very experienced offshore sailor, Rob Bottomley, who many people may know in the sailing scene, but he's sailing with his 24-year-old son, two-handed in a J for the first time, doing the Fastnet, doing the Fastnet double-handed for the first time. I just wondered if that was them, but I'm not sure it is them.
Start of IRC2 at midday, so about 15 minutes to go until the start of IRC2. And 64 boats in this class at midday. We've got Nicholson 55s, we've got Oyster 48s, First 40s, lots of First 40s in here, and Reflex 38, J120s, X40s, Swan 44s in IRC2 starting at midday. Matt Sheehan and James Boyd out on the Fastnet Radio commentary boat. Ian Moore and Simon Viger here at the Royal Yacht Squadron, and we're still watching the IRC3 boats head off on their start, but a really good start for Dream Pearl in that class, Matt.
Yes, indeed. It was a really, really good start, and now we're seeing them the whole fleet heading off down the Western Solent. The bulk of the fleet choosing to go south of the main rum line down to the west, and that of course makes perfect sense because that's the deepest part of the Solent as you run to the west, and therefore where the tide is running strongest. And they're heading out to down there. And as I look through the gaps in this, 80-odd boat fleet, as I look through there, I can see down to the previous class that have gone down there, and they're all, as you would expect, heading over towards the Hampstead Ledge, Saltmead side, so basically the island side of this route down there. And it's quite a frantic beat down here. It's quite an exciting, I mean, as a crew, it's as a team, it's a really exciting part of the race. Lots of tacking, lots of frenetic activity, and then you sort of get out through Hurst Narrows, and then you either hug the top, but most of them I suspect will go all the way out to the Needles Fairway Buoy, and you get there and then you flop over onto Port Tack, or one of two tacks anyway, and everything starts to calm down. You go, ooh. But it is an amazing start. I think it's one of the classic, most exciting starts to an offshore race for competitors.
We're doing 6 knots on Cowes Radio at the moment, heading over towards Bewley. Ian, I seem to be getting left behind here on the virtual regatta.
I think tactically you're doing a good job. You've come over to the started on the island shore and just tacked in that little shift, but yeah, we do seem to be struggling for speed.
Oh dear, I can't let Matt Sheehan catch me up. I'm going to be looking out for the Fastnet radio boat over the next few days. Do go to the virtualregatta.com website. You can enter the Rolex Fastnet race and see how you do, but tacking up the sole, not my strong point. My strong point is crashing into a beach in Ireland. That I'm really good at. The Volvo 65 boats are coming out now and putting their sails up in. We've seen Dongfeng and Brunel and Mapfre, who smashed the Round the Isle of Wight record on Wednesday. What's it like being on those boats?
Yeah, there'll be a lot of, same for all the competitors really. There's a lot of apprehension now running through, they'll have had a briefing this morning, talked about what they're going to do off the line this morning and talked about their tactics in the first hour or so of the race. And now they're coming out and checking the conditions, making sure that that the conditions match with what they were expecting, maybe tweaking those plans based on the conditions that we can actually see and the conditions down the Solent. But yeah, there'll be a lot of anticipation, but they'll be ready for this. A lot of experience on all these boats, and it's going to be a battle royale.
And I'll throw this question open to all three of you. How much will the Rolex Fastnet race and who wins in that class affect who's seen as the favourite for the Round the World race?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that, the teams that have been together for the longest, Mapfre, Dongfeng, they will already be seen to have a clear advantage. And but if they get beaten in this race clearly by some of the newer teams that have just put themselves through in the last few months, then that will give them a huge boost, going into the rest of leg zero and into the start in Alicante.
How about you, Matt? What are your thoughts on the Volvo Ocean Race?
Well, I think I agree entirely with what Ian says. It's absolutely right, and I think one of the other points about this that is important to remember is that the rules, they are identical boats. That's the first thing. So they are identically matched. But it's not just the boats that are matched. The amount of racing they can do is closely controlled as well. So you can't get an advantage by sticking your boat in the water early and then going off and doing every race under the sun to get there. You're only allowed to do certain races, and this is the second race that they're allowed to do. So this is the second time they've ever had a chance to check in with each other, and that in itself also helps to even the playing field a bit. You're never going to get it totally even, because there will always be those who are more experienced, who have either sailed the 65s before or sailed together as a team before. But it is really interesting that they have sort of, as I say, leveled the playing field a shade in that respect, and it also makes it more interesting for those of us who are following it and watching it, because it means that there is real pressure on them. They're not just turning up to tick a box in the sponsor requirement list. This really matters to them, and it matters to different teams in different ways. And I think, as Ian suggested there, that there's a different approach across the fleet. I know, talking to, say, Di Cafari, for example, who is one of the later teams to have formed, this race is as much about practice, as much about crew selection, potential crew selection, as it is about actually understanding how to sail the boat well. They're actually trying to figure out who's going to work well with who and what's going to be the right dynamic. So it's a very, very important race for all of them.
James, how much of a psychological advantage is there for the team that wins the Rolex Fastnet race?
Well, I think it's quite interesting, actually. I mean, there's a school of thought which says that you shouldn't actually win what is effectively a kind of a prologue race, because it's bad luck to do so. I'm not sure if anyone's going to take that seriously in this race, but I'm with Ian. I reckon that probably the two favourites at this stage are Dongfeng and Mapfre. Mapfre, it's actually the fifth time that the Spanish campaign has entered the Volvo Ocean Race, and they've got a really incredible crew. They were one of the first teams to announce, and one of the advantages of that is that you do actually get your pick of the very top crew. Dongfeng is important because in addition to actually trying to sort of build up offshore racing in China, they've got some of the very top French sailors on board. So they've got Charles Chaudrelier, who was with the Group Armour team, which won two editions of the Volvo Ocean Race ago. They've got Pascal Bidigori, who is their navigator, who is considered one of the top sort of French guys in that profession. And they've also recruited internationally. So they've got a guy called Stu Ballantyne on board their boat, who again is one of the most sort of capped and most well-respected offshore sailors in the world, and he's from New Zealand. Yeah, I think it's going to be I don't think those two boats are probably the standouts. You've got Asco Nobel, which is probably a bit of a dark horse. We don't know too much about how they've got the only new Volvo 65. Not that that's supposed to make any difference. And allegedly there's supposed to be an 8th team announcing, because they've got there are actually 8 Volvo 65s in existence at the moment. We have 7 of them racing in this Rolex Fastnet race. Just passing Di Cafaris, turning the tide on plastic. That was one of the last Volvo 65 teams to announce. And the other interesting thing about these boats is that you can have different crew configurations this time. On Di's boat, Di Cafaris' boat, turn the tide on plastic, they're going with 5 women and 5 men. On the Hong Kong boat, which we're passing just on our port side, Scallywag, they're just having 7 blokes on board. But most of the teams are actually sort of doing a compromise. They've got 5 blokes and 2 women, which I think is I think that's the most sort of popular configuration.
The Volvo 65 boats starting at 12:40 along with IRCZ. Of course, we'll have commentary on that. But we've got 2 more starts before the start of IRCZ and the Volvo 65. We've got Class 1 at 12:20, and before them going in just over 5 minutes' time, they're about to get their 5-minute gun. It will be IRC2. And we've got 64 competitors, another record year here in the Rolex Fastnet race, 368 boats. It's the final tally, breaking the previous record. Nearly 3,000 people on those 368 boats. And it's 1 minute to the prep signal for IRC2. Matt Sheehan and James Boyd out on the Fastnet radio commentary boat. Who have you got with you now?
Yeah, James, you were just pointing at one competitor in this fleet that had caught your eye.
Yes, it was actually not IRC2, it's IRC1, but there's a boat which actually won the Brewendorf and Commodores Cup last year, which was called Teasing Machine. It's actually been sold now, but it's a very radical looking bit of kit. It looks like a sort of a mini Volvo 75 with sort of chines and stuff like that. Very sort of futuristic looking boat, and it's been sold. It's now racing. It's been sold to a guy called Mark Emerson, and it's called Phosphorus 2. But it's if you see that boat, it's done incredibly well with its previous French crew, and it'll be interesting to see how well it gets on with its new owner.
You've got British Soldier, the Army Sailing Association here. They're taking part in Class 2. That's an X41 they've got on British Soldier. And the Union Jack on its hull. Just bearing away from the line now, so that gun, the preparatory signal, 4 minutes to go for the start of IRC2. Dongfang coming down the line. Some of the big Volvo boats. Mapfre much further out to the west. So they'll have a good view of the Class 2 start.
Yes, these guys will be watching the previous starts and trying to just gauge exactly what the shifts is off the start line, trying to work out exactly where the strongest current is, and they'll be watching these starts just to refine their plans for how they're going to set up and their timing for their starts. So I mean, everybody's watching the previous start just to make sure that their plans are good.
One more indication out here. We're just out towards the pin end of the line. Another indication of the international flavour of this race. We're alongside a Dutch boat, NED 8434, which is a Salona 40-something. I'm not quite sure who that is, 843.
Pilgrim.
And then alongside her is a French boat, 9602. I don't know what that boat is.
Volvo. It's a... I'm not doing this off the top of my head, you understand.
Oh, I thought you'd memorise them like you did for last week.
It's a Du444.
Ah, yes, okay. And then we've got a Norwegian boat alongside them, which I can't quite see the number of. It's an XP, it's an X yacht, quite a big one. Yeah, then a Swedish yacht. I mean, everywhere you look, it's another nationality. There are a few British boats here. But it's a smaller fleet, this one, with, what have we got? Just over 2 minutes to go until their start. So it's a smaller class, this one.
Fritfram is the Norwegian boat. I think it's only one Norwegian boat in the IRC2 start. The Swedish one is Foxy Lady.
Ah, right, okay, got it.
Lots of Dutch in there, as you say, and a fair few French as well. There's another American boat, Triple Lindy. There's a Swan 44. And Belgian boat as well, lots of Dutch, and a smattering of Scandinavian. There's an Austrian boat in there, Godspeed.
There's a boat, I'm just looking at a bright red hull of the boat 1702, which is a very well-known boat, Scarlet Oyster, which has done many offshore races, and James and I were just marvelling at just how hard that boat is pushed and how many miles she's done, and she's done all of the major Royal Ocean Racing Club events. I can't imagine how many Fastnet she's done, but it's quite a few, but they're extremely good at it as well, and they certainly know their stuff.
This is going to be the 1 minute hooter for IRC2, and some of them turning now in and coming in towards the line.
Yeah, that was the 1 minute gun, and we're obviously, there's a big group down in the middle of the line really, and I'm just trying to see if there's any port tackers trying to repeat that amazing port start we saw in the previously, and there are 2 or 3 J class or J boats down here on port. Don't look like they have their timing quite the same, but I think it's going to be another good group down at the Royal Yacht Squadron end.
There's a handful down here, some of them on starboard, some of them on port, but the main part of the fleet is in the middle of the line. Race officers obviously trying to call whether the line is clear, not helped by some cruising boats just coming back towards Cowes at the moment with 14 seconds to go, and leading them in. It is the Austrian boat I mentioned, is Godspeed, and further up we've got 741, the black sail of 741 further up.
Well, in the middle there goes the gun.
And they're all clear. So the Austrian boat Godspeed's got a good start, and also 49-47 Lisa down here. Who have you got, Matt?
Well, we've got Scarlet Oyster, actually. Ross Appleby's 48-foot Oyster got the best start in the middle of the line there. As I look down towards you, Simon, down there, it's clear to see that once again that end of the line is clearly beneficial, but for those, the bulk of the fleet that started in the middle, Ross Appleby and his crew on Scarlet Oyster got the best start by miles. They got their time on distance absolutely spot on right, and trimmed in, everybody out on the weather rail and in clear air, and in a really nice spot.
Argo 1428 got a good start. Olympia's Tigress here has tacked, and one of the Dutch port tackers is 9112, which is Aggetto, and as Ian was saying, not great boat speed for them, but they're going to try and get their noses in front. We've got tacking is number 21, the Offshore Academy just tacking, and now off go IRC Class 2. Good start for 8405, which is Olympia's Tigress, and they'll all be coming together with the main fleet who are piling in down towards the Isle of Wight shore.
Olympia's Tigress has got an all-girl crew, I'll have you know.
Excellent. Well done to them. They started close to the squadron. Let's see how this shakes out now, because the main bunch who led over in the middle of the line are coming down towards them, but that looks like a pretty good start for Olympia's Tigress there, Ian.
Yeah, I think the breeze has actually gone more left than in the previous start, and it's becoming even more biased to start down here at the squadron, and they're crossing the bulk of the starboard tackers by quite a margin. Even if you can start on starboard at this end and then get an early tack, it's a big advantage, and they made a great start.
And the Austrians, amongst those, Godspeed, Austria 255, have had a really lovely start there. So well done to them. They're getting their noses in front, Matt.
Excuse me, yes they are, and there's quite a group of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boats, that have made, as you say, as you were calling it, that port tack start down the green, and they really have got quite an advantage over the best boat to have come out off the line on starboard in the middle of the line continues to be Scarlet Oyster. There's a Swedish IMX 40 4646. They made a very nice start, but as I say, of those that made the best start further out, it's Scarlet Oyster, and as those first 4 or 5 boats cross in front, you can just see how much of an advantage that is to start down on that squadron end of the line and then stay in that stronger tide and heading out towards the Gurnard Buoy.
So Ian, do you think the Volvo boats and the rest of them are going to be coming in close to us here?
I think it's going to be a fantastic sight. I think it's all playing out perfectly. I think we're going to have a good group of the Volvo 65s fighting to win control of the squadron end of the line right next to the parade. I think all things are set up to have an absolutely stunning start.
Of course, IRC Z starting with them at 12:40. Our next start will be at 12:20 for IRC 1, but then it's the IRC Z, the Maxis and the Volvo 65s at 12:40, and we'll have commentary of that. Náutica just tacking there as they head off past the green, and the mass start there of IRC 2 underway. Their attacking battle up the Solent and then past the Needles, and on they go to Land's End and then up to the Fastnet Rock. Matt, how long do you reckon the racing is going to be, the race duration for these boats?
Tricky one. I'm guessing, what are we now? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I mean, I think it's going to be, I'm guessing, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, 4 days. Ian would be better at assessing that than me, but that would be my guess for these boats.
So I don't think they're big enough for Ian.
No, definitely not. But there will definitely be 3.5, 4 days for these guys. I mean, it will be a long beat all the way out to the Fastnet Rock. And in a range of conditions. Obviously we've got obviously 15 to 20 knots here. Expect that it should be windy all the way out of the Solent, but moderating overnight tonight, and some lighter conditions further offshore, and potentially very light as they get out towards the towards Land's End tomorrow and into the tomorrow evening. So they'll have a range of conditions, upwind the whole way, and then breeze really starting to build as they approach Fastnet Rock, and it's going to get pretty tough and pretty tricky as they go across the Irish Sea. And then hopefully like a fantastic run home in 20 to 30 knots, depending on when they turn the Fastnet.
Ian Moore, James Boyd, Matt Sheehan and Simon Viger with commentary of the world's biggest offshore race. It's the Rolex Fastnet Race 2017. We're looking forward now to the start of IRC 1. They're starting at 20 past 12. IRC 1 at 20 past 12. The final starters then will be IRC Z and the Volvo 65 boats at 12:40. But IRC 2 still heading away up the Solent, and good breeze, Matt, good conditions for the start. We've had a few starts when we haven't had much breeze,
no,
but a good start this time.
That's absolutely right. Last time, of course, at the last race 2 years ago, we had very, very little. I think it was last year, wasn't it? We had very, very little breeze. And I remember I was just talking to a friend actually the other day about it, and seeing some boats that got swept over the line and by the tide, and then had to fight their way back behind the line. And one of those boats was it's a Sigma, and I can't remember whether it was a Sigma 33 or 36, but anyway, around that size range. And they were OCS, as they say, and didn't go back, and there was a bit of a debate apparently on board the boat as to whether they really were over the line or not, and that debate continued all the way down the Western Solent. And then when they got down to about Lymington, they decided that yeah, they probably were over the line, so they sailed all the way back against the tide to get back behind the line to recross and exonerate themselves before then turning around and heading down the Western Solent. I mean, there was no one left, not even cruisers. They'd all gone home for dinner by that stage, and the entire fleet had gone out. But in fact, they ended up taking a much more southerly route, I think it was, because people had hugged the shore, and actually got into a bit more breeze, and actually ended up going straight through their fleet and into the lead of their class.
Wow. That's the amazing story there on their start. IRC 1 got 62 boats in IRC 1. We have first 50. We've got Kerr 39, Kerr 40. We've got Corby 40, Humphreys H39, first 47.7. We've got quite a few challenge 72s there. Clipper boats in here as well. We've got a Grand Soleil 43. and a Vismara 40 from France. So a real mix-up here in Class 1, Matt.
Yeah, that is 100 Vismara, another college buddy. That's two of them. Yes, a right mix-up. Big, smaller fleet, bigger boats is the bottom line for this one. We're just going to motor our way back down towards the start line and go and find out who's there. This tide is really, well, as we keep saying, it's sweeping us to the west very quickly indeed. The other thing that's interesting looking out to the west is that the forecast was for the breeze to come up into the mid-teens as the day goes on, and that's exactly what it's doing. You can see it much breezier down there now than it was for the first wave of starts that went off to the west, but again still idyllic conditions for the start of this race.
Well, we've spoken a fair bit about the Volvo boats, but they share their start with IRC-Z, and let's talk about some of the big boats in IRC-Z. Tonnerre, of course, very familiar to us, but Náutica, this huge maxi. What can you tell us about Náutica? You've seen her around, Matt?
Yes, indeed, yes. She's actually right out at the far end, I'm pretty sure, right out beyond the pin end of the line. She's 115 foot long, I think. She's the biggest boat here. She's the biggest boat full stop here. And unusual in some ways for, you may think, or those that follow the Fastnet every time, because up until this year there was a 100-foot limit on boats. That's overall length. And so boats like Leopard, that was a very familiar sight here, and Rambler 100 and Comanche and those kind of boats were all on the 100-foot limit, but they've opened it up and they've now allowed bigger boats, and she's one of those. She's 115 foot long. She won, I'm pretty sure she won her class in the Caribbean 600 this year, which is a race, a fantastic race around the Caribbean islands, run by the Royal Ocean Racing Club, and sort of billed really as the Fastnet of the Caribbean. Great fun race to do, and I think that I'm right in saying that she won her class. She was certainly one of the standout boats in that particular race, and obviously one of the boats that, if not the boat, that may well be looking, or one of the boats, let's say, that'll be looking for line honours at least in this Fastnet race in 2017.
Artemis Ocean Racing in here too for the start at 12:40. CQS, we've seen a fair bit of CQS in Kalsvik, haven't we?
We certainly have, and Luda Ingvar's boat, his amazing looking machine, is a 100-footer, and very extreme, extremely narrow, extremely long, extremely tall, and extremely wacky in pretty much every department, in that she's so narrow she's actually got wings that come out of the side of the boat to give enough width on the boat to actually put the shrouds and support the mast, so that looks pretty wacky. She's got a horizontal dynamic stability system, DSS foil, which is a bit like a horizontal daggerboard that slides out to leeward, that provides more lift on the leeward side and generates much more power. She's got a dreadnought bow. She's got, as I say, a radical looking rig, and she's quite an amazing boat. She's built for speed and records and the rest of it, and she will be one of the others that will be looking to get line honours, certainly in the monohull division.
Ian, the Volvo yachts have been out here a fair time now. It's still quite a long time until their start. So what are they doing? Are they? Is part of this just sizing each other up?
No, I think we can see Axo Noble going off the line here on port. Navigator on board there is local boy Jules Salter from Kernet Sailing Club. And they're testing the line, really. They're basically sheeting on, checking all their settings for going upwind, and just having a look and seeing what their angles look like off the line. And you can see it's got a really nice left shift, and for sure we're going to see the whole group of big boats and Volvo 65 starting down in this end of the line, probably on starboard, but they're immediately tacking onto port off the line.
Matt was saying it's very limited how much racing they can do, so this obviously is very valuable. But are they checking each other out as well now that they're all out there with their rigs up? Yeah,
well, for sure. This is for some of the teams the first chance to line up and check. They'll be sailing on their own. They'll be doing some sailing, with the teams testing their sails, and now they get a chance to line up against each other over 2 or 3 days, and this is like a proper offshore race practice for the Volvo Ocean Race. And we saw in the last edition of the race how tactical it was and how close it was. We didn't see the huge splits that we've seen in previous years. The boats all stayed close together and tried to make small gains over each other. Just like the Rolex Fastnet race, it'll be like be almost an exact like carbon copy of the bigger Volvo Ocean Race.
Dee Kafari on Turn the Tide on plastic, and Matt, great to see Dee in the race, but you're saying it's quite a recent entry.
Yes, very much so. I was talking to Dee last week about it, and yes, she's very much still selecting crew, still deciding what her team is going to consist of. But of course, Dee comes with a huge amount of offshore experience and expertise. She absolutely loves offshore racing and is extremely good at it, and it'll be interesting to see how they get on. We're just actually alongside them now. They're just lowering their headsail, sticking it back in the bag, having done exactly what Ian was talking about, having gone upwind and had a little look. And I just wonder how I mean, these boats have got canting keels as well on these Volvo 65, so they add another sort of dimension to the racing, because they need to pump their keel from side to side as they tack, and also they're not as a result, they're not the fastest boats to tack, and I just wonder how that might play into their tactics as they go down the green, because chucking in a quick few tacks that you might try and do on a 40-footer is not so easy on one of these boats. And of course they draw probably twice as much as well, so that's going to limit where they can go. Although, as Ian was saying earlier on, there's an exclusion zone down by the green and a line of yellow marks inside which they can't go. So in many ways, I suppose I've answered my own question, in that those marks will probably keep the boats in the deeper tide, but the speed at which they tack will be an issue, I think, and will probably dictate some of their tactics.
So the line is clear, says the race officer here, the Royal Ocean Racing Club, organising, of course, the Rolex Fastnet race. It's just gone 12:15, so under 5 minutes now until the start of Class 1, IRC 1.
Just one boat, I know we will be talking about Class 1, just very quickly, one other boat, when we're talking about the glamorous boats at the big end, one boat I've just seen is Rambler 88, George David's Maxi. Distinct silver, sleek silver hull, black sails, crew all in red. That boat is an absolute weapon, and they too will be looking to go for line honours. I mean, they may be 80 foot and so therefore not as big as some of the bigger ones, but as they demonstrated, I think it was in the last Fastnet when they were up against Comanche, they only finished a matter of minutes behind, despite being 12 foot shorter.
4 minutes to go until they start, and the Challenge 72 boats in here. Got 4 of them, Clipper Ventures as well, Clipper 68, and lots of bigger boats here in IRC 1 with 3.5 minutes to go until they get underway, and not too many down with us, Ian, here for their start.
No, still all looks quite conservative at the moment, big pack down the far end or in the middle of the line, but they've still got 3.5 minutes to go, so most of the fleet on starboard, and it may sort of bunch up at this end of the line in the next minute or so. But at the moment, yeah, it's a smaller fleet as well, so we're not expecting the huge bulge that we saw in the previous 2 IRC fleets.
Team Pindar just going through the line, and lots of them just reaching away from it at the moment. Matt, who have you got where you are?
Well, I believe I'm just looking at, is that Oyster Catcher? 4321, Richard Matthews is Oyster Catcher with a white hull and yellow and blue stripe alongside. We just got them. They look like they're in IRC1. I wasn't aware that he was doing it this year, but Richard Matthews has done many Fastnets. He's also done it in a 12 metre, which obviously rates him as being one of the maddest entries of all, I would have thought. Low freeboard, but he said it was a fantastic race. I think he did it twice actually in his 12 metre racing yacht, the yachts that used to be used for the America's Cup. We're also alongside a Swan 42 here, GBR 86R. Can't quite see what their number is actually. Nice Swan
68.
86. 86R. But a Swan 42. Then we've got an X-Yacht
Maverick.
Maverick, okay. And then we've got an X55 809 that are in the middle of the pack.
Lutein, the Lloyd's Yacht Club.
Yes, that of course I should have known that. We've been watching her all week. So that's the X55 there. So in the middle, but as Ian was saying, a pretty conservative start, 1 minute and 43. We have also, having said it's a conservative start, with much of the fleet sitting well back from the line. You only have to stick your nose up into the breeze a bit and just get going with the tide underneath you, and it doesn't take long for that distance to disappear. And as I say so, a Dutch boat just can't quite see its name, just says no, we're too close to the line, 8778, and dives down to leeward to try.
It's called Bucket List. What a great name for a boat.
It is, isn't it? It just dives down to leeward just to get themselves a little bit back from the line.
Broader View, one of the German yachts bearing away, and the black sail of 4921 InnoX. And that's the 1 minute signal for Class 1, and they all appear to be Ian coming in from into the middle of the line, nobody here with us.
Yeah, and I think things are changing quickly. The last minute, definitely everybody's pushing down towards this end. We've got at least 2 boats on port, and 1 boat pushing all the way into the squadron here, going to tack onto port at the gun, and she looks like, to me, that it's going to make the best start.
Yeah, we've got a couple of them here. And that's Gallivanter coming in towards us at the squadron. They are about to tack, Ian, and
yeah, they're just putting the bow up, trimming the sails on. They've actually probably left their run a little bit too late, and I think they might actually struggle to cross on port now. But here we go, final 10 seconds, we're about to find out.
And some of them pushing up now on the tide. And they're all clear, so it's a good start for 6,000. One of the German boats is Walross, and the black sail of 4921's had a great start here as well. That's InnoX, and Gallivanter, another black sail. Well, if they tack now, they're not going to take too many bows there, are they?
No, and they just have tacked, and obviously they're not crossing the fleet. The main bulk of the fleet are on starboard, but they've still made a moderately good start. They're going to be in the top 10. They'll go off on port and tack under the bulk of the fleet. Katsu's
had a good start as well. Who have you got, Matt and James?
We've got, well, the boat we're alongside is a French Beneteau 36780. Can't quite read the name of that boat. Being squeezed a bit by an Italian boat underneath, Visioni. They made quite a good start of those that started out at this end of the line, but once again, as you've been calling it down there, it is the squadron end of the line that wins through and is the better end to start if you've got the nerve to squeeze in there. But the other boat that stood out to me, although she's not accelerating as quickly as I expected, is a German boat, 7400, very pretty boat, looks like a swan to me.
Latona. Yes, Swan 56.
Swan. And beautiful sails on there, and really nicely set up. And she's going quite nicely, not quite as quickly as I had expected. As we just roll over the front of a French boat. Not quite sure who that is. That is, a British boat, beg your pardon, 4669. Quite an extreme looking boat. I'm not sure what that...
That's Pata Negra.
Ah, yes, okay. Yeah. So quite busy actually out in this middle part of the line, but not as many people being as bold down on the island shore, hoping that they can make a conservative start on this long offshore race. But as they carry on over towards Gurnard, all of those on starboard who are heading over towards the shore are starting to see the fuller picture of what's been going on down on the island shore, as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boats cross the bulk of the fleet easily. It's really not, they have no trouble at all in crossing in port, and there's another wave of boats, another 10 or 12 boats that are coming out on port as they go out past the Gurnard buoy, who are also going to cross clear ahead of the entire group that started out here on starboard. What is noticeable is that with each start, people get a tiny bit bolder. They move a little bit more towards the island side, and there's less and less action out at the pin end of the line. But really, as Ian and yourselves have been saying, it really is that squadron end of the line that's paying off time after time on these starts.
Yes, and it's making for some extraordinarily exciting viewing off the green as the guys that start on port or tack early onto port intersect with the bulk of the fleet on starboard, and we're seeing lots of guys having to duck on port behind the stream of starboard tackers, and then the occasional close cross as they tack off the green. But it's a fantastic sight here as they're dodging and weaving port tackers and starboard tackers.
I think it's got to rate as one of the best Fastnet starts I've seen in years, to be honest. It's absolutely classic conditions, enough breeze to make it exciting, sunshine, tide, and plenty of spectators. It's a proper occasion.
You boys getting jealous, are you? Wish you were out there.
I am, actually. I'm just trying to pick up. I'd like to be on. I'd like to go around on a 65, actually. Although they do heel over. James is a mod 70. James has just got multi-hull running through his veins, which is why we got him here.
So off go Class 1, tacking in the sunshine, fantastic Solent conditions, as Matt is saying there. Off on the big race, the world's biggest offshore race, 605 nautical miles round the Fastnet Rock, and then back into Plymouth. Stay with the Rourke website, the official Rolex Fastnet race website, and also Fastnet Radio for full coverage over the next few days as they race. And of course there's the tracking on the website too, being able to follow exactly where everybody is. It's Ian Moore, James Boyd, Matt Sheehan and Simon Viger with you with commentary on the Rolex Fastnet race 2017. Class 1 heading off on their race, which means we have just over 15 minutes until the start of IRC Z and the Volvo 65s, the final starters here this year, and they will be starting on the squadron line at 12:40, so 20 to 1. And we have been looking at some of the Volvo boats, Dongfeng and Mapfre, both with distinctive red sails, but plenty of others, and in the maxi class, the IRC Z class, some huge black sails in the distance. Ian, who's caught your eye there?
Well, we talked a little bit earlier about Rambler 88. You know, these guys have a huge amount of offshore experience, and they've done a lot of racing here in the Solent and in the Channel this year. And the Rolex Fastnet race is basically the highlight of their season, and they'd like to come and win it. They must be one of the favourites to take land honours in this race, and I think probably the fastest boat in this fleet, although they're not the biggest.
And Náutica out there with both sails up on Náutica, and CQS as well.
She suggests Náutica's just alongside us, and she's so big it just looks like a tower block from Portsmouth has broken free and floated down through the Solent. She's that big. She is enormous. That mainsail is just giant sail there. But interesting, and as Ian says, Rambler 88 is built simply for speed and for racing, although she's considerably shorter. She's a very, very quick boat indeed. And actually, just as we take a nice big wet one over the commentary rib, we see those two boats come together. Rambler has tacked around onto starboard. She's just got a mainsail up, sailing up towards Náutica, who's under full sail, sailing on port tack, out towards the pin end of that line. And you can see the difference in size there. Just absolutely enormous. In fact, I have no idea what Náutica draws, but I would imagine. Actually, I suppose it isn't as much as maybe some of the race boats proportionately, because she is, after all, a performance cruiser or a cruiser racer. She's not built for outright speed, and so therefore probably will have a slightly lower draft. But nonetheless, that'll be an issue for these boats going out through the Solent. They can't get anywhere near as close to the shoreline as some of the others. Not that you particularly want to when the tide's going to the west.
20-minute separation between Class 1 and RCZ and the Volvo 65s. How long do you reckon it will take them to catch up, Class 1, Ian, as they start at 20 to 1?
I suspect they'll be passing boats all the way through the Solent, and they probably won't catch the Class 4 boats until they're actually outside of the Needles Channel, just because the current's so strong today and pushing those smaller boats quickly down to the Western Solent. But there's and of course it's an upwind start today, so these guys will be doing 11-12 knots upwind, and the smaller boats doing about half that speed, about 5 or 6 knots.
CQS tacking just beyond the start line and starting to bear away now. One of the crew on the bow just attaching a line, and those on the rail have to move over with those very distinctive orange fins they have in the hull there, James and Matt, just sending the spray flying. They're heading back out towards you now.
Yeah, that's a DSS foil system, dynamic stability system.
Yeah,
And
we've
it's
got two of those in this race. We've got there's another boat called Maverick, which is an Infinity 46, which is also competing, which is another DSS boat with this foil out to leeward, which basically is the equivalent of having a bunch of people on the weather rail. Another boat, I mean, we were talking about Rambler earlier and how she might be Line Honour's favourite. I think there's a very good chance that the Rambler actually might win this outright, so she might score the sort of the coveted double, which is where you win Line Honours and also the overall prize, which in fact was last done by Ludde Ingvold, who's the skipper of CQS this time. That was about 22 years ago that he achieved that last. So that would be a major achievement if Rambler could actually pull that one off.
There's another boat that's caught my eye out here, which I suspect Ian probably knows a bit about. I haven't seen her before. It's a beautiful looking boat, a German boat called Milan.
It's the old Rosebud.
The old...
basically it's an SCP-65. It's actually won the Rolex Sydney Hobart when it was a boat called Rosebud. It used to be American owned, but it's now it's looking very, very smart considering.
It is, isn't
years
it?
old.
Really pretty.
And Náutica just heading towards Portsmouth at the moment, but they'll be turning around. Not too long to go now, 10 minutes to go until the start of the biggest monohulls in this race. Dongfeng just heeling over and heading away from Cowes. They'll be turning around as well at Náutica. How many people on the rail of that maxi? It's about 20, I can see. They're a long way away.
I think I'd like to change my mind, actually, if I may. If you said which boat, I think I'd like to go around on Náutica now. I've seen her for real. She's enormous. You could park your car at the back.
Ran is out there as well, and I can see a kite surfer as well. They're joining the start for IRCZ and the Volvo 65s. I don't think you want to do the Fastnet race with the kite.
Yes, we're just passing CQS at the moment. I was fortunate enough to go for a sail on her last Sunday, and she's quite a weapon. And it's very nice to have Ludde back in the race. He's sailing with some legends on board, including Chris Dixon, the former America's Cup skipper. In fact, one of the most memorable moments of Chris's career was when he did the Whitbread Round the World race, as was, and memorably came back into the Solent with a sort of full gale behind him on board a Whitbread 60 called Tokyo he was racing. So he's kind of really calling the shots on board CQS in this race.
8 minutes to go until the start of the largest monohulls, and Náutica still heading away there, Ian, but most of them congregating near to the line.
Yeah, Náutica's obviously maybe not quite as manoeuvrable as some of the 65s and the slightly smaller boats. At 115 feet, she just has to pick her spots very carefully. She needs to put herself in a good position, make a good timed run. The other boats are just charging back and forth, checking out the conditions, checking the line bias, and making their final preparations.
Turn the tide on plastic clean seas, reaching up the line, up towards Dongfeng, and Brunel is up there, Scallywag, and where's a Mapfre?
Well, I was just about to mention Mapfre because she's just down near Cowes Road, so she's quite close to you, but just out to the east. and just made me think with 2.5 minutes to go that she looks like she's setting up for one of those port tack starts, or at least a start that's close in towards the shore, whereas the bulk of the fleet are actually further offshore. Though having said that, she tacks around and bears away and heads out towards us. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Mapfre being pretty punchy. They are in a good. They proved themselves in the middle of this week when they went around the island and broke the outright record for Monaghan. In fact, smashed it. Took half an hour off it. Absolutely smoked around the island. So they're really up for it. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to see them line themselves up, as I say, for a good punchy start.
Yeah, Matt, you were saying that in the previous IRC fleets, people were taking a reasonably conservative start, and I don't think we'll see any of that in this final start. Especially in the 65s, they will be battling for every metre, so they'll try and take an advantage at the start and try and take that advantage out of the Solent and try and keep that whole way through this race. So I think this start will be certainly probably the most aggressive of the starts we've seen so far.
What do you guys think of the new format for the Volvo Ocean Race this time round?
I think it's very good. I think a lot of people, a lot of the sailors and a lot of the teams are very pleased to see some of the longer ocean legs come back into play. I think that's one of the key things for it.
Ian, what do you think of the new format?
Yeah, I think everybody's excited to see the long legs. I mean, that would be a real draw for me to go back and do the race again. And the legs, this time the race isn't going up into Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and it just gives you the opportunity to do the leg from South Africa all the way to Australia, and that's going to be a real draw and be pretty exciting. And they've got some proper classic legs, around Cape Horn from New Zealand. So yeah, I think everybody's pleased to see the new format.
And the British port will be Cardiff, of course. James, what do you think about the new format to the Volvo Ocean Race?
Well, I agree with what's been said. I mean, I think to me at least, having followed the Volvo Ocean Race and before that the Whitbread Around the World race for a number of years and covering it pretty much for the last 30 years. I very much like the longer Southern Ocean legs. I think that's kind of really at the core of the event, and so it's great to see that come back. And as you say, the race this time will come to Cardiff. The organisers, Mark Turner, who is the new sort of CEO of the Volvo Ocean Race, has been running Extreme Sailing Series events out of Cardiff, and they seem to be very, very keen on sailing now. So it'll be great to see. It'll be very, very nice to see the Volvo Ocean Race kind of come back to these shores, because obviously its origins are in Southampton, or Portsmouth rather, with when it was organised by the Royal Naval Sailing Association back in the day. So yes, looking forward to Cardiff.
Great stuff, yeah, great sporting city, and great to see the race head to Cardiff. Now, this is the 4-minute signal, the preparatory signal for IRC Z and the Volvo 65 yachts. Real big mix of boats in the maxi class here, and the Volvo 65 yachts with their race, the race within the race, many races within the race, aren't there?
Yeah, and just following on from what we were saying about the Volvo race, I mean, one of the interesting things about this fleet here is we've got the last three, or the current generation, and the two previous examples of the two previous generations here as well, because we've got I think that was it's got a
yes.
Telefonica mainsail, but I think isn't that the former Russian boat? Oh no, it was Telefonica Black, I think, that one. But the Volvo 70, which went around the previous generation, and before that we got Team Jalokia, which is an old Whitbread 60, which eventually became a Volvo 60.
Yeah, that I think is the system. I mentioned Chris Dixon and Tokyo earlier. That I think was the boat which they didn't sail. There were two boats for that campaign, and I think that was one which they didn't sail. So we've got Team Jalokia, which is kind of coming across our bow now, just heading back to the line.
2 minutes and 45 seconds to go. Dongfang just heading away from the squadron as the TV helicopter buzzes overhead here at Cowes Castle, this classic location for racing, and the Rolex Fastnet race about to get its final start. as they all chase off down to the Needles and Land's End and beyond. Another record year with 368 boats entered in the race this year. CQS out there after their exploits at Cowswick.
Another boat which we should watch out for is actually just down to leeward of CQS, the boat called Verona. It's a German boat. I was on the flight from Hell back from Palma last night with some of the crew on that boat, and they were just telling me, I mean, it's a canting keel boat for starters. We mentioned some of the benefits of those, but they also mentioned that they've just fitted the world's longest bowsprit to it, for the length of the boat. So it's quite, and they've got an incredible crew, including Mike Broughton, who's one of the sort of leading British navigators, and various other sort of luminaries of offshore sailing are on board that boat.
Looks like you're going to get a very tight start down, closely fought start. Just as Ian was saying, it's going to be pretty aggressive down your end, guys. And up our end, we've got Rambler, Náutica and CQS further out to sea. But we've got, 1 minute and 20 seconds to go. And it looks like it's getting pretty interesting down at the squadron line.
Oh, fantastic. I don't know why I'm using binoculars. I don't need those, do I? They're going to come in right in close to us, Ian.
Yeah, everybody's got exactly the same idea. And the only fly in the ointment is that the Red Osprey has come out of the river just as in this final minute and has split the fleet. Axel Noble is taking the leeward end. She's the most leeward boat. And the rest of the 65s all bunched just to windward of her. So this will all be about timing. Everybody's got the same plan, and it'll just he who executes the best start with that plan will be the winner.
And CQS just letting the head sail flap there, Ran coming down the line as well, and the huge black sail of Náutica in the distance. But of the Volvo boats, Dongfeng and Scallywag close to the line with just 30 seconds to go now.
Scallywag's looking pretty tight up on that line, I'd say. I mean, she's the closest to the line, isn't she, down at your end?
Yeah, they're bearing away now, and so is Vestas bearing away.
We've got CQS up at this end of the line, just getting her time run with 15 seconds to go. Just underneath her, I think that's Náutica. I know, beg your pardon, not Náutica.
We've got Ran there with her, and Turn the Tide is going to try and port tack them here. They're all clear, the Volvo 65s and IRC Class Z away. Dongfeng leading for the Volvo 65s, followed by Matt Frey, but Dongfeng will have to tack first of all. Vestas with the head sail flapping, trying to get round the front, but actually they're going to have to go round the back, as does Turn the Tide on plastic. How's it look to you, Ian Moore?
Yeah, a thrilling start, very, very exciting. I thought Axel Noble had the best timing, but I was completely wrong. The guys Dongfeng and Matt Frey starting ever so slightly further up the line on starboard just had a better approach. They must have been bang on the line. I really thought that somebody was going to be over.
How are CQS and Náutica doing, Matt?
Well, CQS doing very well, actually. They've wound themselves up. The boat just to leeward of them is not Náutica, it's the one James was just mentioning earlier on. I've forgotten the name. What's the name of that boat, James? The one you're talking about?
Verona.
Verona, oh, that's it, Verona. And I'd say Verona had actually poked her nose out, she has poked her nose out in front, is going extremely well. She's lifted at speed, and I've got a feeling, looking from here,
Is it Rambler, Emma?
she might... is it Rambler?
Yes, I think it's
Rambler's had a good start.
I beg your pardon, sorry, I beg your pardon. Well, that's interesting, because Rambler actually started her charge, yes, of course it is, started her charge from pretty much the pin end of the line, and I was thinking, well, that's interesting, they're going to be quite conservative, but that is a very interesting way to start. I guess she can do that because she's got plenty of speed, rolls in over onto port tack, right in front of Matt Frey by the looks of it. It looked like that might even have caused Matt Frey... No, she's carrying on that tack, so that's okay. But Rambler goes charging in towards the beach, rolls over onto port tack, puts her foot flat to the floor and charges out on port tack as she passes the Gurnard buoy.
Wow, that is epic, and Náutica just tacking now and dwarfing CQS. Never thought I'd say that. What a start here, the final start in the Rolex Fastnet race 2017. Náutica goes about, and CQS still heading in towards Cows.
Yeah,
we're just alongside the other DSS boat, Maverick, which has been on a sort of Atlantic circuit this year. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see how this DSS-equipped boat, which should be sailing as fast as 60 footers, but is only 4 to 6 foot long, will get on in this race. She's up with the Volvo 60 at the moment.
Meanwhile, Rambler pressing out on port tack. If ever you wanted an illustration of just how potent that boat is, we've only been racing for a couple of minutes and she's already just pushed her way straight to the front of the fleet, elbowed her way out there and is absolutely smoking her way upwind. Meanwhile, behind her is Matt Frey on port, leading the charge of the Volvo 65s, but only just, because to windward of her is Dongfeng to windward, and just behind Dongfeng is Team Brunel, Bauer Becking's boat. Then there's a bit of a gap, and it's Vestas, and then interestingly CQS not being able to find the pace quite to come off this line and get out quite as quickly as Rambler did. Sorry, I just hesitated there because it is the Russian Volvo, the former Russian Volvo 70. I see the chines in our hull. Just came sliding up to our windward side. Another potent boat, but in their case, they're watching the rest of the team, most of the rest of the fleet pass in front of them. But an interesting line up there with the Volvo 65s led by the much bigger Rambler 88 heading out to the west. An armada of boats chasing them out there, full on foam up here off Gurnard. Wonder how far they'll chase them out to the west.
And the helicopter for the TV pictures there, getting a great shot with cows in the background of all of these boats heading out. And how are they looking to you, Ian? Who do you think is doing best at the moment?
Yeah, it's interesting because although Matt Frey probably won the start, the group of boats which actually tacked a little bit later off the exclusion zone now have a really nice lane on port, and well, I can't tell for sure, but Dongfeng probably, but D Kafari also, and Scallywag, and even CQS probably won't be able to cross Rambler, but of the 65s, they're probably the group which are leading the charge, and Rambler probably leading the race when she tacks back into starboard. I'm pretty sure she's going to cross the entire fleet.
That's the final start of the day, the final start of the Rolex Fastnet race 2017. Plenty of racing though, it's only just begun. That was IRCZ and the Volvo 65s. So who with you now, Matt?
Well, we're just off Gurnard, and we were just looking to see who went round the corner, because they would have gone a bit out of view for you, I guess, from there. And it was D Kafari who tacked over, one of the boats that tacked over around to Gurnard and has followed that route down. CQS came this way as well. But what's striking is the difference in performance in just in a few minutes of sailing to see. I'm hesitating because we've got a try. Is that one of the ones they do for the Tour de France? Yes, it is. So a try which isn't actually doing the Fastnet. Come charging past us. No, what I was going to say was it's fascinating to see the difference in performance already between the big guns, and I mean all of them in this fleet are performance boats, but even then there's still some huge differences in performance throughout the fleet.
And off go the Volvo boats and IRC Z. That really was a great spectacle, wasn't it, James?
Just fantastic, yes. I mean, it's very rare that you get this kind of fleet gathered. We see the battle for the 100-foot, between the 100-footers, the big maxes for line honours, we see every year in the Rolex Sydney Hobart, but we get a bigger turnout of them up here in Europe these days at the Rolex Fastnet race. So, as I was saying earlier, I mean, just the incredible kind of range of boats we see in this race. Some of the very top racing boats from around the world gather here every 2 years for the Rolex Fastnet race, and we're going to have an amazing race on our hands.
Yes, we're spoiled really, aren't we? We're real treat there. But in terms of the conditions, Matt, that really doesn't get much better than that.
No, it certainly doesn't. I mean, even to be honest, even if you had a downwind start and there was plenty of breeze and you had the kites and everything else, I don't think it would be as dramatic as this. There's something about starting in the conventional manner, going upwind with the tide, punchy waves, tacking, boats coming in, in towards the beach, boats crossing tacks. it's just superb. I mean, you could not ask for a better start to the Rolex Fastnet race.
I have a question for Ian. Do we think it's going to be a big boat race still?
Yes, I think it is. I think, I mean, obviously these guys are going to go really well upwind tonight and then into tomorrow. And I think what happens is that as the cold front comes through tomorrow morning, it's going to bring actually an area of light air, and the big boats will be able to punch through that area more quickly. If for some reason it doesn't get light at Land's End, then we get a scenario where boats are finishing in building breeze, and then it is possible that the scenario changes and we get another JPK 1010 winning the Rolex Fastnet race. But as the forecast stands right at this moment, it's a big boat race.
The records fastest monohull with movable ballast at 1 day 18 hours and without 1 day 21 hours. And of course lots of multi-hull records there as well. The winner in 2015 was Comanche, a 100-foot maxi, so see how the maxis do this time around. But lots of different trophies, lots of different records, and line honours, of course, back in Plymouth. Fastnet radio there on 87.9 over the coming week, and full coverage too on the Royal Ocean Racing Club website for the Rolex Fastnet race. Lots of spectators coming back now from the green and Egypt.